Right guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. A highly chaotic 24 Hours of Nurburgring looked destined to end with a victory on debut for the rookie Max Verstappen and his number 3 Mercedes-AMG, but over the last couple of hours of the race, all hell broke loose on the track, as did part of Verstappen's car. Much reaction to exactly what happened here, the massive frustration and heartbreak again for Max at the Nordschleife. He, however, reacts and says he's absolutely convinced he's going to come back and win this race next year, but will the Formula 1 calendar allow it? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. These were arguably two of the stars of the show of this race over these last 24 hours. Let's just talk about it because we discussed a lot yesterday what happens in Max's initial double stints to close out the day. Then, of course, he was back in action. This is that Dacia Logan that everyone was talking about. It's actually pretty funny that this part of the track, they had a lot of oil troubles here, that the Logan handles it with no issue. All these other guys slide off the road. And, well, we know that, of course, Kevin Estre in the Grello Porsche, he also crashed out in similar circumstances earlier in the race. It wasn't a great day for Formula 1 drivers past and present at the Nürburgring because Timo Glock, he was doing 112 kph in a 60 zone and he therefore got some penalty points, and added to previous penalty points I think that he's got as well, he had his license revoked. So yes, not a great day for Timo Glock. Is that Glock getting disqualified and losing his Nordschleife permit? Yes, it appears that it is. And, well, the day looked pretty good for the other Formula 1 compatriots, that, of course, being Max Verstappen. Now, look, the night shift here was sensational to watch. I think a lot of people, and it's been an interesting weekend for Formula 1, I think, in many respects, right? Because a lot of people have watched this because they may not usually tune into endurance racing. I watch a little bit here and there, but I've certainly not watched as much endurance racing as I have these last few weeks with Max Verstappen getting seriously involved. And I think that Formula 1 has, well, something to think about, right? Given the amount of interest in these last few days, and the fact that Max is clearly having a great time over there, and whether they will decide that next year they need to make sure Max can't do this with various calendar decisions, or whether that won't be part of their plan. Anyway, this is the eventual winning car, the number 80 Mercedes, to the right of Max Verstappen. And Max and Engel had an absolutely phenomenal fight overnight, concluding here, really, when they went side by side. Max is coming up to some traffic. Max easily could, if he wanted to, have yielded here, and maybe Engel was expecting him to, right? Look, he's got a kid and he's got a wife and a kid at home, right? Like, maybe you'd expect him to, but of course Max isn't going to yield. Max is going to full send. They make contact once and then twice. They make contact again. You can see Verstappen's car squirreling around as they make contact again. Engel has to go onto the grass here, and Max weaves his way through the traffic. What a moment that was anyway. But Max holds on for the lead of the race and actually built out a pretty substantial gap. So by the morning, there was roughly a 30-45 second gap when Max ended his, well, at least that was when he ended his stint towards the second part of the morning. But overnight, the number 3 Mercedes was still leading the race, as we talked about yesterday. The second place car was the other Mercedes, the number 80. So both part of the same team. So understandably, they were willing to, let's say, play the team orders game to an extent and say, you know what, we've not won this race in 10 years. I think Engel was in the car last time they won it back in 2016 Mercedes, so they just wanted to get the victory at this point. Let's not crash, let's not do anything crazy, let's just, because clearly Engel and Max were going at it hammer and tongs overnight, but for the morning it calmed down a little bit. But it looked great for Team Verstappen. The pace was sensational. All of the other top contenders were pretty much out of the picture. It was a very chaotic race. As I said, the Grello Porsche was out early doors. The Audi of Christopher Haase was out early doors. I think last year's winning BMW was out. The Lambos, they had their problems, penalties, all these other things that happened, right? So the Mercedes were well positioned to win. And the first 6 hours were so chaotic that it kind of set up a circumstance where it looked pretty much destined that one of the Mercedes was going to take the checkered flag first. And it looked like it was going to be Max, because Max was absolutely on fire. The discussion was even that when he handed back over, he had roughly a 30-45 second lead. Gave the car back to Danny Juncadella, and Max was actually set to take over again for the final stint and take the car into the checkered flag. And there was some interesting commentary on just the quality of Max's his driving. This is the double stint that he did, his actual first stint in the car when he nearly crashed on the first lap, but after that he put together, well, the senior officials described it as nothing short of a masterclass, an incredible display of overtaking. The pass around the outside of the Porsche, I think it was nonetheless spectacular. And overnight, Max had some sensational pace as well. So, look, it shouldn't come as a massive surprise that Max looked like the class of the field out there, but I do think it's very impressive, right? I mean, these are top-quality GT3 drivers with immense experience in the Nürburgring, and Max was right on their pace, if not faster, throughout the course of the weekend, which I thought was extremely impressive. We know how good Max is, but I still think he definitely put on a show in that number 3 Mercedes. Unfortunately, didn't quite get to finish the mission. That is the nature of endurance racing, and some phenomenal pitches, such as this one. This was another one, actually. So he was coming up to lap one of the other cars in the same category, and he nearly got wiped out. So this is one of the slower cars here that they were trying to overtake. The Porsche gets past this Porsche, and they have a little bit of contact. This guy, number 82, slides off to the left-hand side and crashes into the barriers. Max very marginally avoids him. So it looked like, wow, all the luck. Because you need some luck. If you're going to win a 24-hour race at the Nürburgring, you're going to need a little bit of luck to go your way, whether that's weather, whether that's strategy, whether that's just crashes for rivals and not for you. But Max, he escaped bidding it in the wall on his first stints. He had a couple of questionable incidents, even the very first corner when Juncker was in the car and made contact with the pole-sitting Lambo. That gave that Lambo a puncture. Verstappen's number 3 car, which Juncker was driving at the time, that was okay. So they got a bit lucky, right? And we saw the incidents, the contact with Engel. They got away with that as well. So it looked, and then there was this incident. So it looked like, okay, Team Verstappen have ridden their luck, and there's about 3 hours left of the race. It's all going well. And Max Verstappen and the team were the champions of the 20.5 hour of Nürburgring. But unfortunately, it's a 24-hour race. And we saw this unfolding. I was kind of confused why the commentators didn't pick up on it immediately, because they came into the pits. Juncker took over again for Max. The number 80 pitted as well. They were roughly 45 seconds behind. And after the first lap, that gap was down to more like 30 seconds. And that can happen, you know, you get bad traffic for a lap, you lose 15 seconds, it happens. But the next time, that gap, the next time it updated, that gap was now down to 14 seconds. And the next time, it was down to 3 seconds. And it was very, very clear, and people didn't pick up on it immediately, but it's very clear that car number 3 had a serious issue. And, well, we saw exactly what that was shortly afterwards when we finally got the confirmation that, yeah, car number 80 had taken the lead at the Nürburgring 24 hours by some margin, and Juncker was back into the pit. Immediately, they had the right side tyre off just to try and figure out what was going on behind the scenes. They dragged the car into the garage, they jacked it up, they then had to jack it up again. This actually was the moment where Juncker was overtaken by the number 80, and that, of course, would be the final pass for the lead of the race that we saw in the entire 24 hours. This was Juncker behind the wheel of the car, sitting there hoping that they could somehow get it fixed, because at this point the race win was very much slipping away. The number 80 and the number 3, same car, similar pace, right? I mean, unless Juncker and Max could pull off an absolute miracle, you know, the win was kind of slipping away. But the Lamborghinis and the BMWs and the Aston Martin, which ended up being the other podium sitter, they were still quite a way behind. If they could fix it within a few minutes, it might have been possible. But I think Juncker knew this was not easily fixable, and they confirmed what happened to get them to this point. So they got some sort of an ABS warning, so anti-lock brakes. But Juncker said that he could handle it, it wasn't too bad, but then there started to be other issues. The noises, the vibrations started to pick up, and then they figured out that they'd had serious damage to the drive shaft, which caused even further collateral damage, had major implications for the rear axle, and they did successfully fix it over the next couple of hours and actually got the car out there again for the fans for the final few laps. So they were a classified finisher. They finished P20 in the end. end in the SP9 category, so the category they're in, effectively GT3 category, 38th, I think, overall. And as Junkadea says, I came out of the pit, everything was fine, but after about a third of the lap, I saw an ABS fault message that kept flashing on and off. I reset the message and that was okay, but then I realized that there was no ABS, it wasn't working. So I was driving without it, but it wasn't too bad. I could manage it, I adjusted the brake balance and the car was still controllable, but I had the feeling they wanted me to come in to find the issue, but I thought it was better to keep going and figure out what we could do about it. But then it started to get worse, and maybe Junkadea thinks that if he pitted after the first lap, maybe they could have saved it, but one more lap was enough to just completely destroy the car. Started hearing noises, the car became undrivable, something was about to break and he had to slow down. That's when the number 80 takes the lead. I drove slowly back to the pits, we found a problem with the drive shaft, then that caused extra collateral damage to the rest of the car. That's probably what caused the issue where the electronics went haywire and the ABS went off. We repaired the car, I'll do the last couple of laps to reach the finish. Obviously it's heartbreaking. He also mentioned this, I thought was interesting, because he's like, this is just unlucky, we had a mechanical issue, the drive shaft was totally new, we'll be back next year. It's endurance racing at the end of the day. These things happen, but it's so brutal to happen in this manner when you've driven such a perfect race, really. We drove very carefully the last 6 or 7 hours because both cars were in very good position. There was no reason to take risk. We didn't abuse the curbs. We were just careful, because I know some people have said, oh, well, Max must have been pushing too hard or something, or caused the car to have some damage. Look, you never really know what caused it. Maybe it was just a very unfortunate failure. Junkadea says that they knew that they didn't need to take risks and they weren't taking risks, but just it's one of these things that sometimes can happen. So the car breaks, they take it all apart, and within a few minutes it was pretty clear that, yeah, this was not going to be resolved quick enough to get this car back on track as a contender for the podium any longer. Junkadea was out of the car and looking very sad indeed. This was actually Jules Gounon, I think, who was also driving in one of the overnight shifts. Lucas Auer did a good job in the car as well, so all 4 men drove commendably and they drove well enough to be deserving of the victory, but it's a cruel sport, that is for sure. This is one of the only images we really saw of Max, just kind of taken in the fact that having worked so hard and come so close, once again it was not to be. And I think there is a question about the curse of the number 3. I don't know if you want to call it that exactly, but since switching from number 3, of course he couldn't keep number 1, right, because Lando won the title, but he could have gone back to 33. That was an option, but he was number 3 when he was, younger, so he wanted to go to that instead. But it's not been a great season, has it, for number 3, right? I mean, he crashed in Q1 back in Australia, and he did fight back, of course, in the race, but it wasn't great. It was P6, wasn't it, in the end? DNF'd in China, disqualified at the Nürburgring the first time because they used too many sets of tyres. They had a problem with the car the next time he tried it. They had damage and ended up 39th. Japan was P8. Obviously, everything else has gone pretty badly as well. He spun at the start in Miami and ended up 5th. And then with 3 hours 20 on the clock, the car breaks while leading the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, looking destined to take the checkered flag. And yeah, so it was all very frustrating. As Junkadea says, Max had a lot of fun. We could all see that. Maybe now there's a reason to come back and do it again. As I say, they ended up finishing in 38th place. And you can, obviously, these are the different categories. I think it was 20th in the SP9 category. Actually, yeah, you can see it right there, SP920. So, look, commendable work, but arguably, they look like the team that were going to win it, right? And Max actually said this straight after his stint. He was like, I've tried to keep the car safe. It feels good. I nearly had an accident. That was when the 2 Porsches collided. But I'll try and come back next year, depending on my agenda, right? Depending on what's happening elsewhere, mainly depending on what's happening in Formula 1, assuming he stays in Formula 1 for next season, which he probably will. But you never really know if, depending on the calendar, potentially. Now, the Dacia Logan that everyone was talking about actually had a problem, came to a halt, and it was like, oh my god, it's over, I can't believe it. But no, they did get it back on track, so the Dacia did finish the race, which was a spectacular story, because a lot of people were rooting for this little car throughout the course of the weekends. This was Gounon, as I say, this is Junkadea, and yeah, it was a frustrating conclusion for all involved. These were the winners, so congratulations to Engel and his teammates in the other Mercedes. It was the pole-sitting Bortoleto number 84 Lamborghini that ended up coming back to second after a very chaotic one. As I say, there were so many of the key contenders eliminated early on that it's like, I'm not saying this is the only chance Max is going to get, because it's not. I'm sure that Max is going to win this race at some point. But it was kind of like a golden opportunity, right? Like, a lot of the other key contenders were eliminated early on. The various incidents, penalties, crashes, whatever it was. The Mercedes was the best car. They were driving very well. They had the edge on the other team just about. So it was looking perfect for Verstappen to win on debut, but did not happen in the end. And congrats to the Aston Martin boys as well. I don't think they were expected, really, to be in the conversation. But Aston Martin have done something this season, in some regard anyway. Maro Engel, he does comment and says, like, it's super unfortunate, obviously, for the number 3 car. But the Nürburgring always has some surprises in store. So Max gave some comments on this. There was a post by Danny Junkadea saying how, you know, motorsport is brutal sometimes. I love you and hate you so much, Lord Schleifer. And as Max says, strong drive, mate. We are going to be back. He commented something similar on Gunon's post as well and says, you know what, don't worry, we will be back. We're going to come back stronger and we're going to do it again next time. He actually did this post himself. Very unfortunate and frustrating ending. These things can happen. Still really enjoyed the experience together with the team and with his teammates. Thanks for all the support in and around the track. So look, Max will be back. He's clearly had a great time. He wants to actually win it again, but you're like, actually win it, because he's had a pretty difficult time at the Nürburgring in recent weeks, despite coming so close on many an occasion. I think my question will be whether he's going to get an easy opportunity to do so again. It just so happened that this year, the Nürburgring 24 Hours fell between Miami and Montreal. It was kind of perfect. That is not guaranteed to be the case again. Now, there is an argument, because actually I think they did this for one of the NLS rounds, is move it so Max could do it. And obviously it's been huge for the following of this race. The on-track attendance was far higher than they've had ever. Everything was sold out. And I think it was a great day for motorsport in general, right? To see 4-time Formula 1 world champion come over and race in the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, bring a lot of new eyes to it, including my own. As I say, I watch a bit of endurance stuff, but certainly not as much as I have done recently when Max has been getting involved. But arguably, it's not been a great look for Formula 1. You know, people have really enjoyed watching Max race in this series. He's clearly thoroughly enjoyed it as well compared to F1. And he will then go back to driving the RB22 and certainly not have as much of a good time again when he gets to Canada, more than likely. So that's what's interesting for F1, is that if you're Domenicali, would you think, well, let's just make sure that next year our calendar clashes with the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, Spa, Le Mans, whatever it is, to make sure that Max can't do that, because it's going to look bad on us. I'm not sure they would do that or whether they would think about it in those terms, but it's just something that has been thrown around today. I do actually have 2 brief Formula 1 actual updates for you all, just before we close out the video. There's been much discussion about the Aston Martin gearbox and the problems that that's been causing. Apparently they are looking to make a qualitative leap in Canada. The updates of the transmission in Miami didn't deliver the expected results, but the electronic setup of Honda's factory should enable a big leap forward in Montreal, which will create better stability. Is it going to make the car much better? I guess we'll see. But Aston Martin are hoping for a step forward. Maybe they can be inspired by the podium of the 24 Hours of Nürburgring. And there's also this one on Esteban Ocon. So I am expecting over the next couple of months, especially as we get into the summer, discussion to continue on the driver market, because a lot of drivers have contracts that are concluding very soon. We know that Ayaka Komatsu has been quite even critical, he was, of Esteban Ocon at the end of last year, saying that, yeah, it's not great that he's where he is with respect to Behrman, who of course was a rookie last season. And Ocon has started out this year also about 2.5 tenths off the pace of Behrman so far. So it's not looking great, and for whatever reason that might be, Haas might be looking at other candidates. In fact, there has been some speculation that Komatsu doesn't like Ocon. He's not happy with his performance. In fact, it's possible they kick Ocon out before the end of the season and they bring somebody else in instead. Apparently, during the Miami weekends, that relationship between Ocon and Komatsu further deteriorated. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this. It'd be weird because usually you don't see teams that are further down the grid, certainly teams with like actual, I mean, Ocon's a race winner at the end of the day, right? Like drop drivers mid-season. Maybe Red Bull will do it, right? We've seen plenty of reasons for that over recent years. But yeah, this would be very interesting if it's a consideration, but certainly Ocon is under pressure, and if this continues, Ocon won't be there in 2027. I think that's pretty likely. Getting dropped mid-season would be kind of outrageous, but yeah, just want to keep your eyes on there. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. This time, next weekend's is the Montreal Grand Prix. So we've had a couple of weeks off, again, Formula 1, but as of tomorrow, we are back to race week, and we are back to big discussions as we go into Canada, and Max will be getting on the plane after what has been a very enjoyable 20.5 hours of the Nürburgring 24 hours. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.